once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, August 18th edition of Bang the Book Radio. My name is Adam Burke, your host for the next half hour as we chat with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We're going to talk about the NHL Playoffs. We're going to talk about the Northern Trust, which is the first event of the FedEx Cup Playoffs this week at TPC Boston. Then we'll finish up with the Indy 500, which is coming up here this weekend, and Brian's got some thoughts on that for you on today's show. Over at bangthebook.com, we are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there. My daily MLB picks and tips piece, preview of the Northern Trust, continued coverage of the NHL and the NBA playoffs, UFC, NASCAR, we'll have an Indy 500 preview as well. We're not that far away from the Kentucky Derby, so we'll be talking about that here in the near future. And, of course, the football season coming up here as well. And speaking of the football season, if you're going to be in the Westgate Super Contest or the Circus Sports Million or any of the other contests that are out there in Las Vegas, if you don't live in the state of Nevada, you will need a proxy service. Maddie and Tony over at footballcontest.com have been our preferred proxy service for all of those contests. We'll be using them again here for this year's contests, and they do a phenomenal job. They're very easy to work with, very approachable, easy to get in contact with if you have any sort of issue. So check out Maddie and Tony over at footballcontest.com. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest on today's show, that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, among other things. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam, a lot on the plate. I mean, the hockey's been great. The hoops, action in the morning, afternoon, and night. It's awesome. It's a way to dive back in here, hoping against hope that things continue to improve and football finds a way.
Well, let's take a look here at the NHL card for Tuesday. We'll also give you some thoughts on the Wednesday card here as well. We'll do that in a second, but first, Brian, I want to ask you, based on what we've seen here so far, what's the biggest surprise of the first round of the NHL playoffs for you?
I like the Islanders. I have a future on the Islanders. Dominating the Caps, I think, would probably qualify. And the whole thing was the break came for these guys. I bet them at 25-1 back in February, and then they literally drove off a cliff, and they weren't going to make the playoffs. So the break came at a great time for them, and you get a simple system with a coach, Barry Trotz, that knows how to match up against other opponents. That's why an 8 can beat a 1 in hockey. It's one thing, and you don't want to diminish the regular season. First of all, it's a different thing. It's a gauntlet to get in. You got to make sure you get in. But once you get in, the goaltender is the great equalizer, and frankly, so is the coach, because when you're playing the same team every 48 hours, you can be a matchup nightmare, and that's what the Islanders are. I thought they'd fare well. I thought, okay, I didn't think they'd be, putting the Sasquatch foot on people.
Well, and that's the thing with the Islanders in this series. I mean, look, you can apply an obvious caveat to this series. Without Nicholas Backstrom, the Capitals are a much different team. But the Islanders have dominated this series 5-on-5. I mean, they have easily been the better team. And you talk about goaltending and the importance of that. I mean, look, we saw Darcy Kemper steal a game for Arizona. We saw Corey Crawford steal a game for Chicago. It's happened here, but the better teams are mostly holding up at this point in time. You could argue Washington's better than the Islanders, but Washington without Backstrom and with the current state of Braden Holtby, they may not be better than the Islanders. So the goaltender is the great equalizer, but the better teams here do look like the better teams for the most part.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame Holtby. I don't think he's been hideous. I mean, and Backstrom's important, and there's no getting around that he's the table setter. But, I mean, you've still got Ovechkin. You've got Wilson, who's tailor-made to play in the playoffs. And you've got the Norris Trophy winner. The Islanders are – I give the Islanders credit. I mean, the Islanders are playing at a very high level. And their plan is simple. And that is go for it out of the gate. And if they get the lead, you got a problem. And they've been following the formula to a T.
Well, speaking of great equalizers here, Carey Price has allowed 3 goals in 3 games of this series, and yet the Canadians are down 2-1. They play the first game here today, 3 o'clock. Philadelphia, $1.25 to $1.35 favorite out there in the market, depending on where you look. I mean, look, Carey Price deserves a better fate in this series with how well he's played, but Philadelphia's played well. Carter Hart has played well. The Flyers have done what they've needed to do to take this slim series lead. What happens today at 3, Brian? Does this series get evened up, or does Philadelphia put Montreal on the brink?
I don't like this series. There's nothing about it I like, and this is a game I'll be watching. Price is capable of winning any game. The numbers you just threw out there, and everybody is flipping out about the Flyers. And I'm like, I know they had a big winning streak at the end of the year, and they look good coming up here. But the round robin games that they were a gong show. I think Philly probably gets by it. The price is right. Would you say it was 20 cents?
Yeah, Philadelphia's minus 125.
Well, that's pretty low for a team that people were talking about them like they were the Central Red Army team. I thought they'd fare well here, but people were ready to hand them the cup. I don't see it. I think they're good. But no, this is one, honestly, I'm probably on the sidelines with this one. Maybe an in-play wager, watch and see how it goes. Total's got to be what, 5 under 30, I'm guessing?
Yeah, 5. You can find under 5 even money out there.
Well, I'd probably lean under 5 with Price, and Hart's been good. If I had to play it, it'd be the under.
Calgary and Dallas coming up here today. This is a 2-2 series, but again, this is one, if you look at the stats, look at the metrics, Dallas has easily been the better team, especially at 5-on-5, but they've squandered some opportunities. Ben Bishop, unfit to play. Anton Hudobin has had to be the guy here, and Cam Talbot's played really well, not only in the qualifying round, but also in this series. But Dallas, a minus 125 favorite as well. Did they win this game 5 here today?
If Calgary had played anybody in the West other than Dallas, I'd have been all over it. The Calgary win over Winnipeg was flawed, with Scheifele getting hurt in the first period, then Laine, and their defense was an atrocity. And they get Dallas, who is hard to trust, and then there were question marks about Bishop. I think it's telling that I think Dallas, I had them the last game, but they're pulling teeth just to get the win. But I think Calgary's phony. I don't trust Dallas, but I got to say I probably trust Dallas more than Calgary, and I think Dallas wins it in 6. I think Dallas wins the next 2. In spite of themselves. I mean, they've done so many stupid things. The first game they had a 2-goal lead, and they have a power play with like 4 minutes to go, or 5 minutes to go, and give up a shorthanded goal. Then with 3 minutes to go, Radulov takes a penalty in the offensive zone, and they get a power play goal to tie it. It's like, Dallas is impossible to trust too. But if whoever comes out of this year wins this, they're getting pumped in the next round.
Washington and the Islanders tonight. The Islanders have flipped to a favorite here. They're in the minus 115 range. Vegas hovering around a $2 favorite now. These two series could end tonight. The Islanders looking for the sweep. Vegas looking to finish it in 5. And this is something you kind of wonder about here in the first round. I mean, I know these guys are professional athletes. I know they're all competitors, this and that. But, now you've been away from your families for a little while. You've been away from your friends. You're in this bubble where you can't do a whole lot. I sort of worry about these teams that are on the brink of elimination maybe kind of mailing it in. I know Chicago won game 4, but they got horribly outshot in that game. Very, very bad. Crawford made 48 out of 49 saves in that game. Are both of these series over tonight, Brian?
I actually believe Washington can win this game. Ovechkin is not a quitter. And there's a part of me that says the best thing that ever happened to Vegas was that they lost that game, Because had they won, they'll be sitting around in a bubble for 9 days. No family, no, okay, whatever. Playing hockey is probably the best thing for them. I think it was Nick Cousins, or maybe it was March or so, said, well, we're excited for the next game, and it's good to be around the rink. Because all they're doing is some of them go over and watch the games, and to be sitting idly by, I don't think the Islanders are sitting there, want to be playing with fire and give these guys any life. But I don't believe Washington packs it in. And I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing for the Islanders to not let rink rust creep in. So I like the Islanders to win in the series. I kind of like Washington today.
As we look ahead to Wednesday here, Columbus and Tampa Bay, the early game. And look, the Blue Jackets kind of got shafted in this series because they play that huge Game 5 against Toronto that, it was a self-inflicted wound. They should have won Game 4. They play less than 48 hours later in Game 1 against Tampa Bay, go the 4 overtimes, wind up playing the equivalent of like 7 games in 2 days or 3 days, something like that here. They look like a team out of gas. Korpisalo's kept them in it, but Tampa Bay has carried the play throughout this series. Is this one over at noon on Wednesday?
Likely, but I'm a believer in Tortorella, and this team's got a lot of fight and a lot of bite to them. They've dug themselves the hole they can't get out of. Likely, I'm not laying the number with Tampa Bay. The one thing I would say, I think Columbus can circle the wagons and win another one. But the one thing I'd be more prone to say, and I think you saw it in the Colorado-Arizona game yesterday when that sense of reality kicks in the elimination game, because Korpisalo has been so good. I think the over would be the safest play in that game tomorrow, because I think once the reality kicks in, the game gets away from you. So Columbus would still have a chance to if they play a track meet kind of game. Columbus could maybe get the win, but I would venture a guess this would be a more up and down kind of game tomorrow.
4:00 Eastern time, Carolina and Boston tomorrow. Boston, $1.45 favorite to finish off this series. Tuukka Rask opting to leave the bubble. Some people saying that's a good thing for Boston, with Yaroslav Halak maybe a little bit more focused, a little bit more engaged. What do you think about that one tomorrow afternoon? Does Boston end it?
Probably. Carolina, I went right to bed when it was over. The Carolina loss last night cost me a great day yesterday. They're up 2-0 in the third period, and Reimer decides to come out of the net. If you're coming out of the net, you've got to get there. He comes out of the net, he gets caught, and DeBrus puts it by him, and then the floodgates open, and it turned into close your eyes, put blue jerseys on these guys. It was Reimer, and the Hurricanes were awful. They were outshot 15-0 for the majority of the third period. Got one shot on goal and scored. But they gave up 4 goals in the third period. It was like, if you remember that Leafs game where the Leafs had the series won and the Bruins destroyed them at the tail, like in the last 7 minutes of the third period, and won the series. It was like time tunnel. I don't know how Carolina responds to that, because it was a hideous collapse. Clearly Mrazek's going to get the call. Justin Williams maybe can rally these guys around. I thought Carolina was coming out of the East. That's a devastating loss for Carolina.
Well, I think we can both agree that Colorado is going to finish it here on Wednesday against Arizona. So Vancouver and St. Louis is the late game here in the Edmonton bubble. And this series is fascinating. In the first 2 games, Vancouver played very, very well, played excellent hockey at 5-on-5, and of course took advantage of Jordan Binnington not playing particularly well. The last 2 games, St. Louis has won them both. Vancouver's only scored 3 goals in the last 2 games, and it's been Jake Allen, who's been terrific, 61 saves on 64 shots. Markstrom has still played well, but the Canucks not doing as much offensively as they did in the first 2 games of the series. What about this swing game here in Game 5? What do you think?
Well, the goaltending change worked, and I thought Binnington was really sketchy in the round robin. He had a good game, then he had a bad game. he just didn't look right. And Allen's auditioning for a future job because he's out of there after this year. So I think St. Louis has found their groove. And the other thing is Vancouver's a speedy, quick team. And we're seeing it on display here. St. Louis kind of found their legs here. But what St. Louis did last year is they wore teams down in series. So, by the time you get to a sixth or a seventh game, the pounding they give you takes a toll. And St. Louis looks like, they're on a Tootsie roll here. And by the way, I wouldn't sleep on the Arizona-Colorado thing. That there's a wagering opportunity. I played them yesterday on the puck line. Colorado, to me, is winning the cup. I mean, I've said this all year long. Kemper stood on his head the other day, just like Crawford. It's like, and Colorado's like, enough of this. And, tomorrow, it probably kind of the same thing. I mean, it's like a 6-1. I honestly, I think they murder them, and they're -$2. But I think on the puck line, I mean, you'd be pretty close to pick if you played Colorado on the puck line. So I wouldn't just gloss over it and say, yeah, I'm not laying the big number. Play the puck line.
So we transition over to the golf side of things here as the FedEx Cup playoffs begin at TPC Boston in the Northern Trust here coming up on Thursday. But Brian, I pulled a Brian Blessing last week. I had the runner-up with Billy Horschel.
Yeah, well, I guess I pulled a Brian Blessing and had Jim Herman. No, honest to God, you sent me the text you had Horschel on Sunday night, and we hadn't talked, and I'm like, don't hate me. But this is what we've talked about on this podcast. And honestly, I'm proud of myself because I've been kind of listening to myself. Where, I shoot for the fence, and with three guys at big numbers, something along those lines, and then watch the tournament and jump in. And on Friday night of the PGA, I got Morikawa at 50-1. Higher than his odds were to win the tournament before it started. And memory escapes me, Adam. Maybe you remember. Well, I think he was he down 5, maybe going to the weekend,
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So this past weekend, I had 3 long shots. One of them being Taylor Gooch, who going to the weekend at 120-1. One of them who was tied for the lead. So I said, well, I'll just ride this out with him and play matchups. Well, Gooch spits the bit on Saturday. So now I'm like, well, okay, I'm out of this. I got nothing. So I went and I looked. Now, Jim Herman shot a 61 on Saturday, and honestly, nobody shoots a round like that and follows it up with another great round. But I'm sitting there going, when this guy's in contention, he's actually pretty steely-eyed. Sunday morning, he's 4 shots back, and I'm looking at it. I'm going, well, Sung J M had a hole-in-one. He had the great day. So I could see him kind of regressing, and I'm rooting for Horschel because I've got a bet on him for the FedEx Cup at 200-1. So a win for him's monstrous, but the ideal scenario for me is he finishes second. And on Sunday morning, I did get a piece of Herman at 50-1. So back-to-back weeks after the tournament started, got the winner at 50-1. But for this week, and the result couldn't have worked out better for me because Horschel gets a boatload of FedEx points. He moves up in now that as of today, he'd make it to the Tour Championship. And he's the guy, a kind of guy, he loves the courses, the rotation they're playing, and he's a former FedEx Cup champ. I don't know what it was or what I was watching. It was back in February. And I said, I know what he's like at the end of the year, and he was playing okay. And I put a couple bucks on him at 200-1 to win the FedEx Cup. Before the PGA, I said, there's something telling me watch out for Adam Scott coming back off the layoff because he had been just away. He'd been in Australia. So I bet him at 80-1 for the FedEx Cup, and he played well at the PGA. So I've got 2 guys I got a real vested interest in to play very well this week on the premise that the Tour Championship's coming up. And by the way, that format, if you remember, it's the leader of the FedEx Cup standings starts the round. It's not the top 5 guys can win it. It's the leader starts at 10 under. The second place guy in the standings is at 8 under. Third place is at 7, I believe, 6 maybe, and then it's one shot down. So the guys that had the lead in the standings get a running head start. So we're not sitting there with permutations with 4 holes to go. If this guy wins and that guy finishes 9th, and so from that end of it, it makes sense. But anybody you bet this week with conviction, you should absolutely put a bet on them to win the FedEx Cup, because those numbers, they'll be gone after Sunday.
No, that's an excellent point. And when you look at this Northern Trust here at TPC Boston, keep in mind that this event typically floats around to different courses. But if you are a course form player, if that is something that is part of your handicap, TPC Boston used to host the Dell Technologies Championship, which was also the Deutsche Bank Championship. So this course has been used a lot. We do have a lot of data from this course. It's just not from this event specifically. Top 125 in the FedEx Cup playoffs are there, and I believe all 125 of them, at least as of now, are in the field. So we'll see if we get any withdrawals, anybody with a COVID test, something like that. The field does get cut to 70 next week for the BMW Championship. That's at Medina. And then the Tour Championship at Eastlake is the top 30. But you got DeChambeau and JT, the 12-1 favorites. Rory and Rahm, 14. Dustin Johnson, 16. He's played very well here of late. Schauffele and Morikawa, both 20-1. Day, Simpson, Koepka, 25. Again, top 125 players in the FedEx Cup standings here, so it's an outstanding field.
No, it absolutely is. And don't forget, there is a cut for this tournament. After this, there are no cuts. So there will be a 36-hole cut for this event. There are some guys I'm looking at in a nice price range. I got to stick it out with Adam Scott. He's sitting there 34th in the FedEx Cup standings. And I think he's fresh as a daisy. And I thought he played extremely well at the PGA. And I can see Scott, winning one of the next 2 and having a real shot to win the Tour Championship. And I'm rooting for that. I'm not going to bet Horschel this week. I mean, I'm rooting for him. I'd love to get him in the top 5 going to Atlanta, but from the price play perspective, I think the break hurt Sung Jae Im more than anybody. And because he played week after week after week, he never stopped. He never stopped playing. And he's sitting there at number 5 in the FedEx Cup standings. But this week they're giving you a number on him that is very hard to pass up. The kid is starting to round back into form, and I watched him this past weekend. When he gets the putter going, he's real dangerous because, believe me, he can throw darts. But for some reason, they got him in the 60-1 range. So I like Sung Jae Im. I like Adam Scott. Scott's 40, I believe, this week. Sung Jae Im 60. And the other guy I'm going to play that I think, it's the last thing I saw. I was really impressed that final round at the PGA from Matthew Wolff. And he is a guy that just flat out can go low. And I can see him getting hot. And 70-1 on Matthew Wolff. Those are the 3 I'm running into this tournament with these guys. And by the way, there's a lot of money. They're all motivated, but Wolff is motivated. He's 33rd in the FedEx Cup standings. He's another guy I could see all of a sudden getting white hot here in the next 3 weeks. And don't forget, the money's stupid. The winner of the Tour Championship gets $15 million. And they had the Wyndham Rewards top 10. Justin Thomas is sitting on his yacht Sunday, made $2 million, drinking a Mai Tai.
Well, good work if you can get it, I guess. So for those listening out there, I mean, if you got kids, I don't have any, but if you got kids, put a golf club in their hands and, see what maybe transpires. There are a handful of players I'm looking at. I mean, look, I'm playing Colin Morikawa this week. I know he's only 20-1, but I mean, this is a ball strikers kind of course. Par 71, 73.50 or so in yardage. You got to hit it. You got to hit it to the green. If you put it somewhere in a bunker around the green or in some of the rough that's around those, can be a real challenge. Morikawa is the best iron player on tour. I don't even know if it's that close anymore. I got to play Morikawa at 20-1. I know it's not a sexy pick by any means, but I do like him. Daniel Berger at 33-1, same thing. Great ball striker, played great since the restart. But a couple of other prices I am taking a look at here. Paul Casey at 45-1. I mean, Paul Casey was second in strokes gained tee to green at the PGA Championship. Played fairly well last week at the Wyndham. Wasn't great, but it seems like he's kind of made some adjustments. And again, if you are a course form handicapper, I do think it's nice if you know your way around the course. Paul Casey's got 2 top 5s and a 21st in his last 3 starts at TPC Boston, so I like him a little bit. You like Sung Jae Im at 66-1. I like Kevin Kisner at 66-1. Great putter. 10th in strokes gained tee to green last week. 6th in strokes gained approach. Top 20 at the PGA Championship. He was top 15 in strokes gained approach there. So I'm not taking any big long shot plays this week, but I like Morikawa. I like Berger. I like Casey. I like Kisner. Maybe add another one here along the way, but those are kind of the 4 guys I'm looking at.
And believe me, I'm a fan of Morikawa, but the only and I like all your picks. The only thing I would say, and what would keep me, I want to see him. I want to see what's shaking here with him, because you win the PGA Championship. This is not going to be the case for this kid. He's going to be like Spieth was, out of the gate. But virtually 90% of guys that win that first major, they've not disappear, but it takes them a while to win again. And you just think what a whirlwind it has to have been for this kid for the last 2 weeks after winning the major. I want to see him on the course before I'd step in. That would be the only cautionary tale I'd give you about Morikawa. Talent-wise, every week he tees it up, he can win.
The only thing I guess I would counter that with is, in this bubble where you're trying to protect yourself and, all that, it's kind of hard to, go out and live the high life or, anything like that. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a tempered experience. The lid comes off the trophy when he holds it up, and, there's no fans to celebrate him or anything like that. So maybe it's just a little bit of a different feel here because it's 2020 and everything's just all screwed up. But, I mean, the kid's so good. And I love watching him play, too. It's great to watch guys like DeChambeau who can hit it 400 yards, but, then he bitches and moans about fire ants. Like Morikawa just goes about his business and does it really well. He's fun to watch, man.
The most impressive thing about him is a lot of guys would have vaporized for a long time after missing the short putt at Colonial, where, he had a short putt to win on 18. He missed it, and he had basically a 3-footer to extend it in a playoff and missed that. And a lot of guys would have just folded in the next 2 months, and he just come back and showed the guts of a burglar in Ohio, putting the birdie on top of Justin Thomas and then winning the PGA. So, no, I mean, he's steely-eyed. There's no doubt about it. It's just one of those things. He's not out there going nuts. I think part of it is just to recapture that intensity of being involved in a major and then, hitting a shot we're going to talk about for the next, rest of our lives. Every time the PGA's played, right, they're going to show Tiger running after the putt and pointing at it now, and then on top of it, now they're going to show Morikawa's shot on the par 4 that he put it 6 feet from the hole.
No, that's very true. And it was funny, too, because, he was in the clubhouse already kind of waiting on everyone to finish up. And they kept showing those shots of him. And he's in the tent, and he's watching the replays of his shots. And him and his caddy are just kind of laughing, smiling about it and all that. It was kind of a surreal moment. And it is always weird when those guys that aren't in the last group are the ones in the clubhouse with the lead.
Well,
and they're either waiting on the playoff or just waiting to actually go out there and collect their, comically large check and nice trophy.
Well, you watched it this past week, how different guys handle it. I mean, literally, if Billy Horschel had made the putt, he would have won the tournament by default because Herman almost swallowed the cap of the water bottle he was drinking. He was so nervous. Did you watch him? He was in there watching this thing. I mean, literally, the poor guy looked like his head was going to explode.
All right, so let's talk a little bit of IndyCar here. Usually we talk NASCAR on the tail end of the show, but with the Indianapolis 500, why not? Scott Dixon, your plus 450 favorite. Alexander Rossi, plus 700. Marco Andretti, who's been running very well here of late, plus 800, same as Ryan Hunter-Ray. What are you thinking about here for the Indianapolis 500, Brian?
Well, I was heartbroken that the kid qualified so good. I am all about Takuma Sato. He's on the outside of the front row. Believe me, and I wish he was 20th. I really do. This guy's nuts. He is absolutely crazy. He'll win or wreck. There's no middle ground. He is just insane. He is fearless. He's won it before, and you got him at 16-1. You know, I was wishing he was mid-pack, and you got the 25, 30-1 kind of price on him. I just love this guy. He's nuts. And I love the Indy 500. The Masters is my favorite sporting event. The Stanley Cup playoffs in totality are the best sporting event. And one of my favorite, it's right up there. I grew up with it. I love it. I'll never forgive them. They ruined the IndyCar racing circuit when they split factions 25 years ago or whatever. And it's almost unwatchable everywhere else. But there's something about Indy. The racing's great. There's drama. There's passing. And I love it. So it's one of my favorite days of the year is the Indy 500. So I'm in on Sato. And I'll tell you, I got Fernando Alonso at 100-1. And he's starting 26th. This guy he's a Formula One world champion driver who's tried the last couple of years to win the Indy 500, to win every prestigious race. He almost won it the first year he was here, had a problem late. Last year, the car was bad. He didn't even qualify. He's in this event, and he's going back and returning to F1 next year for Renault. And Renault's already told him, good luck this weekend. We're not letting you do this next year. We're not allowing you to go. You're F1 next year. And this guy's starting 26th, and he said the car is good, and they didn't have the speed for qualifying, but the difference, Adam, is there's qualifying trim and race trim. And when they set the car up for race trim, that's when it becomes a driver's race. And he is absolutely got a shot to win this thing, and he's 100-1 only because he's starting in row 26, which doesn't mean a thing. I mean, by the third lap, he could be running seventh. You know, I mean, and if they set up the race trim that the car is competitive, then he's the X factor. I think Alonso at 100-1 is a ridiculous overlay. But if Sato doesn't wreck, I think he wins.
Well, Sato did win this back in 2017, so we'll see if he can do it again here this year. For Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, what do you got going on those two shows right now, Brian?
Oh, well, it's great. I mean, I got to be honest with you, just so much for us to talk about with the games morning, noon, and night, and hockey and hoops, and Sportsbook Radio with all the sportsbook directors, the top sportsbook directors in Vegas, our dear friends, and get their take on the other side of the counter. And the hockey show, obviously, is like Nirvana every day. Great guests around the hockey world, and we got tons of hockey to talk about. So that's noon to 2 Pacific time. KSHP.com, where there's a listen live function. I archive the shows at sportsbookradio.com and put the links out for that and other podcasts on my Twitter at Brian Blessing.
Brian, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Adam, always a pleasure, bud. Let's go for football. Let's training camps. You know, it's I know you're wrapping it, but here we go, man. Even with no preseason games, right? The Cowboys lose McCoy for the year. Just get him on the field and start playing football.
Yeah, let's definitely hope that winds up being the case. And, I mean, we're kind of seeing some possible moving parts with college football, too. I mean, SEC releasing their conference schedule yesterday, and I don't know. I still don't think college football happens. I think the NFL will give it a go, and we'll probably have more success with it. But, hey, still a lot of moving parts here with, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks until the start of the NFL season?
Yeah, in the next 3-4 weeks, and I don't know that they do it, but I'm sure they'd consider it. They wouldn't want to put the Sasquatch foot on college football, but if it literally comes down to a conference or two, the NFL might just sit there and say, All right, we're playing Thursday night. We're playing 2 on Friday. We're playing 3 on Saturday. We'll have a boatload of games on Sunday, and then we'll do a Monday night doubleheader, and virtually every NFL game becomes a standalone game that's being televised where you're not watching 5 games at once, and the handle would go through the roof. So that would be something to watch for me in the next little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that the NFL is probably going to try to do. Spread things out a little bit more, not stack, 12 of their 14 Sunday games at, 1 o'clock. That seems like a good idea for them to spread it out a little bit. And, hey, I guess we'll see how everything shakes out. But, Brian, again, appreciate your time. Go ahead.
I know. I'm just saying, if you played, you would only do 1 on Thursday because that's a nightmare for teams that play Thursday. But if you play
maybe get rid of Thursday and just do Friday.
Well, the TV contract is balloon money on Thursday. I don't know if they would change that. But say you played 1 on Thursday, you played 2 on Friday, that's 3. You play 3 on Saturday, that's 5. You're playing 2 on Monday, that's 7. So then basically what are you looking at in the 7 to 8 game range on a Sunday where 3 of them are, well, no, 5 of them.
Well, one's in prime time.
But I'm saying with the networks, you'd have 5 with the 2 early on network, 2 late on network, and a prime time. Leaves you only like 2 games a week that would be, if you say is the least attractive games that were going opposite another game.
I think it's a great idea. I think we've had a lot of great ideas here on this show. Some of them seem to have come to fruition. Others have not. Like, I think everybody should be mic'd up in every sport because that would be a whole lot of fun. Along with that pay-per-view broadcast, as you mentioned. By the
way, it was hilarious last night. It was the end of the Yankees game. I don't know if you were watching this. And you never hear that. And this is why the hockey would be so spectacular. It was Chapman in the 9th inning. What's the guy? Was it for the Red Sox? Miller? Or who was it? It was an outside pitch. It was a slider that broke around the plate. And literally, Jim Cott was calling it. It was like Jim Cott saying it. The Red Sox guy, he turns around, he looks at the umpire, and he goes, "No effing way." And they just cracked up. And I mean, the language, it's not about hearing them curse, but to hear the actual things they're saying to each other and interacting. So it gave you a window after all these years we're alive, what the batter says to the umpire when he gets a call he disagrees with. I really think they should have brought the audio into be a major focal point of this. And, they're worried about language. Please.
No, I completely agree. I absolutely agree with you, Brian. And again, a lot of stuff for us to talk about next week here and in subsequent weeks as well. So really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Have a great day.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing, once again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. SportsbookRadio.com, KSHP.com, at Brian Blessing on Twitter. Thursday, I'll be back again with another edition of the Bettor's Box, talking all things Major League Baseball. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.